while people are excited, I also see a lot of just unengaged, don't care anymore. And so a huge part of what we are trying to do is to say, if you don't like it, then come in and you change it. We change things from the ground up, from the inside out. So if you don't like how establishment Dems are running things, then come on in, come into the party.
Hey there, I'm Jesse Fox Mayshark, and this is Headlights, Voices from the Progressive South. Headlights is a production of the Progressive South, a nonprofit media platform dedicated to amplifying progressive voices and values across the southern United States. You can find more information, including how to support our efforts, at our website, theprogressivesouth.org. This week, we'll be hearing some voices you don't hear a lot about. Young Southern members of the Democratic Party, which, as we all know, is a distinctly minority party across most of the South. The party, of course, is not exactly reliably progressive or particularly popular with younger voters anywhere in the country. But as a new generation rises within it, they are also seeking to remake it from the ground up. The voice you heard up top was Julia Kaye, vice president of the newly organized chapter of Young Democrats here in Knoxville. I thought it was interesting that the group was forming here and now in 2026 in one of the most Republican-dominated areas of the country. So I sat down with her and chapter president Solomon Trapp to hear about it. That conversation's coming up. Later in our Arts and Culture segment, we'll talk about this weekend's big Arkansas Folk Festival in the Ozarks. But first, the weekly news roundup. This week, we're talking about school curriculums, what gets taught and not taught in public schools and universities across the South. Specifically, we're going to look at new social studies guidelines in Texas, restrictions on teaching sociology in Florida, and some dispute in Virginia over a bill on teaching the events of January 6, 2021. First to Texas. The state has long served as something of a bellwether for K-12 instruction nationwide, for the simple reason that it's one of the largest markets for textbooks and teaching materials in the country. The state has been developing a new social studies framework for the past few years. In 2025, the State Board of Education adopted standards that place a new emphasis on Texas history in particular, and on a particular view of it. As the framework puts it, the focus is, quote, Texas as a leader in the nation and the world, unquote. Critics and advocates for minority groups and perspectives have raised alarms that a panel of content advisors appointed by the state board to help shape the curriculum is loaded with right-wing ideologues and has few people with actual K-12 teaching experience. For example, the advisors include David Barton, an evangelical Christian political activist and former vice chair of the Texas Republican Party, who argues that the constitutional separation of church and state is a myth. And David Randall, a conservative scholar who's argued that textbooks focus too much on the negative impacts of American colonialism and slavery and are too positive in describing FDR's New Deal programs. Among the changes that some critics have opposed are the minimization of topics like Japanese internment during World War II, the fierce resistance to desegregation and the civil rights movement, and the experience of Texas's large Hispanic population, which of course has been part of the state since it was created. As the Texas Tribune reported, during a public meeting of the State Board of Education last week, students from across the state criticized the framework and testified in support of a more inclusive approach to history. Caden Davis, an 11th grader from Humble, Texas, said, quote, We know when something is being left out. What we need from our schools isn't a watered-down version of history. We need the truth even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges us, unquote. 6th grader Jamira Sharif said, quote, Schools should do more to promote equality, respect different cultures, and making all students feel included so they can be proud to be American, unquote. And 7th grader Gannon Davis Keener said, quote, I want to learn history in a way that challenges me to think, not just remember. I respectfully ask that you slow down and allow teachers and parents a greater role in revising these standards to keep the level of thinking high so students can truly learn, understand, and enjoy history, unquote. The State Board is scheduled to finalize the framework by June, a time frame that, if they stick to it, will not provide much opportunity for any significant revisions. Meanwhile, in Florida, an entire academic discipline is under attack. The state's Board of Governors, which oversees the 12 schools that make up Florida's public university system, has set new restrictions on the teaching of sociology and made clear that it views the whole field as somewhat subversive. In a meeting last week, the board, whose members were mostly appointed by conservative Governor Ron DeSantis, voted to remove Introduction to Sociology as a course that can count toward core graduation requirements at any state university. It remains available as a major or minor, and colleges can still offer it to the general student population, but only as an elective. It's the latest step in the state's multi-year effort to marginalize sociology as part of DeSantis's war on what he calls wokeness in education. The state first issued new sociology curriculum standards to align it with DeSantis's restriction on discussions of race, gender, and other hot-button cultural issues. Sociology faculty across the state protested that the new standards are at odds with the established principles of the field. During last week's board meeting, State University Chancellor Ray Rodriguez, a former Republican state legislator appointed by DeSantis, argued that if that were true, the problem is not with the state law, but with sociology itself. Here's part of what Rodriguez said. He starts out by recounting objections to the new standards that he's heard from faculty members, and then explains why, basically, he thinks they're all misguided.
At the University of Florida, Professor William Marsiglio said, "It has never happened in my career where administrators are pushing to have a course taught in a way that is inconsistent with the academic discipline. It is an affront to academic freedom." Also at University of Florida, Assistant Professor Evan Latoria said presenting this text as representative of our discipline erases our field's capacity to address social problems. At FIU, Professor Matthew Moore said this version does not live up to the standards of the field. We're giving them a subpar, poor curriculum. At FIU, visiting scholar Katie Rainwater said, they're making determinations that are giving our students a really impoverished version of our discipline. At UCF, the Associate Professor of History and President of the United Faculty of Florida, the Union for Faculty Members, said, people in the union are really upset. They see this as a threat to academic freedom. And last week, The Guardian reported, after interviewing multiple faculty members, that sociology faculty members plan to post syllabi that are compliant with state statute and then teach what they want in the classroom and let the universities deal with the consequences. And finally, FIU Professor Zachary Levi said, these state directives are telling us to abandon professional ethics and to refuse to root our lessons in existing sociological literature, the norms of our professional organization, the American Sociological Association. This final comment was incisive. His charge is that teaching sociology in a manner that complies with state statute requires the abandonment of the norms of the discipline as defined by the ASA, which begs the question, is that true? I visited the ASA website. There I found the upcoming national meeting for this year. Its theme is, quote, disrupting the status quo, putting sociology to work for a more equitable society. Reviewing past annual meetings revealed their 2024 theme was intersectional solidarities, building communities of hope, justice, and joy. ASA summed up 2024 themselves with the following statement. The 2024 theme emphasizes sociology as a form of liberatory praxis, an effort to not only understand structural inequities, but to intervene in socio-political struggles. Incidentally, that conference was held the year after this board removed principles of sociology, citing its political and social activism. This year, ASA says their goal of the 2026 conference is to consider what must be done differently so that sociology not only examines social problems, but also offers evidence-based solutions for social progress. As witnessed by their own themes, goals, and words, the ASA declares that the sociology's mission goes beyond understanding society and now extends to its transformation. Sociology as a discipline is now social and political advocacy dressed in the regalia of the academy.
Rodriguez went on to directly address accusations that the state was engaging in politically motivated censorship of ideas it doesn't like.
The media has framed a false choice before the board today, that you either violate academic freedom and comply with state statute, or you can violate state statute and comply with academic freedom. My recommendation to you is to reject that false choice. The path to preserve academic freedom and preserve compliance with Florida statutes is clear. Remove sociology, 1,000 and 2,000 courses from all general education classifications. Leave these courses as electives, free to compete in the marketplace of ideas, and leave them as the majors and the minors for the students who choose to study them.
The only voice on the board in opposition to removing sociology from the state's core educational courses was its one faculty representative, Kimberly Dunn, a professor of accounting from Florida Atlantic University. She argued that sociology introduces students to concepts that are useful across an array of disciplines.
Sociology contributes directly to the competencies we consistently emphasize. These are skills our graduates need across every sector. Maintaining sociology on the general education list preserves disciplined, evidence-based inquiry into critically important aspects of the human experience.
The board then passed Rodriguez's proposal. It's not surprising that sociology has drawn particular heat from DeSantis's war on woke. While issues of racial, gender, and other inequities arise in many areas of academic study, they are of necessity central concepts in sociology. The field applies data-driven analysis to the study of human society and relationships, including questions of hierarchies and how they are formed and perpetuated. You can't engage in serious study of any society without looking at the ways power is accumulated and wielded, and how some groups are empowered based on certain characteristics, while others are systematically marginalized. But of course, those are exactly the kinds of discussions and inquiries that the anti-woke reactionary forces, who largely represent groups in power, are eager to limit. There's a very different kind of curricular challenge going on in Virginia. The state, as we've discussed before, now has a Democratic trifecta controlling the governor's office and both houses of the General Assembly. And the Democrats in the legislature have taken their own whack at a thorny curricular issue this year. How schools should teach the events of January 6, 2021, when a violent mob of President Trump's supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol building in an attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The bill, sponsored by Democratic Delegate Dan Helmer of Fairfax, does not require Virginia schools to teach anything about January 6th. But it says that if they do, teachers are not permitted to teach that the gathering was a, quote, peaceful protest, or to suggest that there was any credible evidence of fraud in the conduct of the election. Helmer told the Virginia Mercury that it was a response to Trump's ongoing lies about both the election and the events of January 6th. He said, quote, "We just want to make sure that if school boards choose to teach on January 6th, that they're not presenting the false narrative that is out there," unquote. The bill passed both chambers on mostly party-line votes and has been sent to Governor Abigail Spanberger for her signature. But the anti-censorship writers group PEN America has objected and asked Spanberger to veto the bill. The group, which has also protested curriculum crackdowns in conservative-dominated states, said that it was dangerous for the state to explicitly forbid certain viewpoints. In a letter to the governor, the group said that it respected the effort to ensure students learned the truth of what happened on January 6th. But it said, quote, "Dictating the content and perspectives allowed in classrooms should never be in the purview of elected politicians. This is work that should be carried out by academic experts and experienced educators through state curricular processes or local educator-driven procedures," unquote. The deadline for Spanberger to sign the bill is April 13th. As of Friday, April 10th, there were no reports that she had. But she did sign a different Helmer-sponsored bill last week, which in its own way is aimed at correcting historical revisionism. The state will no longer renew special license plates commemorating Robert E. Lee. A portion of the funds from the plates has gone to Sons of Confederate Veterans, a leading neo-Confederate group. In a statement, Helmer said, quote, "The Confederacy was a 4-year period in which traitors hell-bent on preserving slavery tried, and then failed, to divide the Union. The Confederacy and its leaders do not deserve our commemoration, and its adherents certainly do not deserve taxpayer dollars," unquote. Okay, now we're to my interview with the organizers of the Knox County Young Democrats, based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. They just officially launched at the end of February. It's the first time Knox County has had a chapter of the National Young Democrats organization, a branch of the national party aimed at organizing and motivating people ages 18 to 35. After the 2024 presidential election, there was a lot of discussion of the Democratic Party's poor standing with voters nationwide, and especially with younger voters. Although voters under 30 overall supported Kamala Harris, it was by a relatively small margin, just 51% to 47%, down significantly from a 25-point margin for Joe Biden in 2020. The general consensus was that by 2024, younger voters viewed Biden as out of touch, and weren't significantly more motivated by Harris once she entered the race, blaming the administration for spiraling inflation and cost of living. Democrats face a particularly steep hurdle here in East Tennessee. The Appalachian corner of the state voted against seceding during the Civil War and supported the Union, and has reliably elected Republicans to Congress ever since. But Knoxville, like most metro areas across the South, has trended increasingly blue over the past few decades, particularly among its younger voters. That is the trend that Knox County Young Democrats hope to capitalize on. I went to their launch party at a brew pub in a revitalized industrial district along the Tennessee River. The room was packed with more than 100 people, including local Democratic Party officials. There was also a special guest, State Representative Afton Bain, who drove over from Nashville. She made national headlines in December when she ran a closer-than-expected race for Congress in a heavily Republican district. She's part of a wave of young progressive Democrats who've been elected to the legislature in recent years, where they're part of a small but increasingly vocal minority. Bain has Knoxville roots. She grew up and graduated from high school here. And at the launch party, she told the crowd that the work ahead would be hard but important.
We are in a moment of nightmares, and we are in a moment of transformation. All right. And it is going to get a hell of a lot worse. All right. I cannot begin to tell you just the unfathomable fascism that is penetrating every pore of the legislature right now. And the antidote to authoritarianism is connectivity and local organizing. Okay. Which is why this is so important.
A few weeks after that party, I sat down with Solomon Trapp and Julia Kaye, the new group's president and vice president, to hear about their own stories of political activation and what they hope their Young Democrats chapter can accomplish in the heart of red Tennessee. It was an interesting conversation. So, Seth, let's go to the tape.
All right, and I'm happy to be sitting down with Solomon Trapp, the president of the Knox County Young Democrats, and Julia Kaye, the vice president. We're here in the headquarters of the Knox County Democratic Party, right in downtown Knoxville. Thank you both for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
So I'd like to start out by hearing from both of you individually kind of about your own political journey, how you became politically engaged and aware. And maybe, Solomon, start with you. Where did you grow up? And, you know, at what point did you start becoming politically aware, and what form did that take?
Right. So I originally grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Moved to Cookeville when I was 11. Cookeville, Tennessee is a little smaller. Been there. My family still lives there. And then I went to UT for college. So I came back to Knoxville. I would say that it's all started for me when it was the Obama election, of course, in 2008. It was different seeing somebody like myself on the screen. I'm looking and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a president that looks like me. As a child, that was something that was very moving. And my parents can see that as well. They've always been political and they've always been left-leaning. So I grew up in a very Democratic household. So there wasn't nothing new. And I would think that coming into the realm of politics officially, it was about, I guess it was like after I graduated college in 2023, I was been in meaning to get involved, and I was in college, but college took a lot of time, and there's a lot of things that I was doing as well on top of that. But then afterwards, I got into the Democratic Party, and lo and behold, I was showing up to the wrong district meeting the whole time, but it worked out, and I got where I needed to go. And I've been on the communications committee, and now I serve on as the communications co-chair for the communications committee of the Knox County Democratic Party. And being in the realm of the Knox County Democratic Party, there was a lot of, not people that looked like me, I would say, in the bunch. While they do a wonderful job of, pulling in candidates and recruitment and, pushing out the vote, there wasn't a lot of recruitment of the young individuals, like, the young demographic. So it was difficult to kind of feel like I had a voice. And so I decided to look into other means. I was like, there's a lot of young people here in Knox County. I mean, like we have Pellissippi, we have UT, we have all of these colleges, and there needs to be a way for them to plug in. So I was thinking of a way to do that. And lo and behold, there was not a Knox Young Dems chapter. And we are, I think it's 9. There's 9 chapters, I think, in the state of Tennessee. And we were not one of them. And I was like, we're the 3rd largest county in the state of Tennessee. We need to be on the map. We need to have a Young Democrats chapter. And apparently beforehand, there had been previous attempts, but nothing kind of made it through fruition. And so I took the initiative and pulled on Julia and Alyssa. And we have been doing this for, I guess, the past 8 months, really trying to get everything organized and ready to go.
And of course, it has young in the name. I don't always ask people's ages, but it seems relevant here. So Solomon, how old are you?
I am 25. I'll be 26 Wednesday.
Okay. And Julia, tell me about you.
So I'm from a really small town called Smithville, Tennessee. What's funny about you asking how our political backgrounds start is at our very first meeting where we were just planning everything, we had the same conversation. Where are you from? How did you get involved? And we realized that his aunt and my dad were on DeKalb County Democrats together and have known each other for years. His aunt and cousin are BFFs with my grandparents. And one of our first meetings, they were at my grandparents' house when we were together planning things, and we didn't know each other before.
Right.
So it's funny that we both come from this. He has family from Smithville as well. So obviously. And so that's how this came about or whatever. I just thought it was interesting. But my family has also always been very left-leaning. So I grew up in politics. I was stuffing envelopes for John Kerry Edwards when I was probably 6 years old with my dad. My grandparents are political trailblazers. They have always been involved. So it's been instilled for me at a young age. And I, registered to vote at 18, have voted in every possible election that I can, including special elections or so be it. I was in student government in college. I went to Tennessee Tech and have been involved ever since. I would say my political background as far as involvement goes has been less directly with the party and more on campaigns. So in high school, I worked for Gail Hendricks, who is also a family friend who ran for state representative. And then most recently, I worked really hard on the Afton Bain campaign. Obviously, she's from here, so that's our girl. But my organization comes from more getting out in the field. So doing canvassing, doing the phone baking and that. So when we came together, I would say Solomon and Alyssa were more deeply involved with like the party itself. And then my background came from more being out in the field and doing stuff. So we're able to form a group from that with all of what we want to do, different viewpoints and things like that.
And how old are you?
I am turning 29 this month. We're 8 days apart from birthdays. So 28, turning 29.
And so the Young Democrats label covers, is it like 18 to 35? Is that the demographic you're talking
18 to 35. And so you can go all the way through 35. And then once you turn 36, you're a not so young Democrat anymore.
Doesn't have a name.
Yeah, we still welcome you. You can still volunteer. We have volunteer tracks as well for those who aren't in the 18 to 35-year-old range.
Yeah.
So that's how they can get involved as well as donating.
Sure. Well, and so Solomon, you talked about seeing the need for a chapter here and that there hadn't been one. And of course, we're 2 years, well, almost 2 years now after the 2024 presidential election. And a lot of the talk that came out of that election was that, boy, the Democrats are on the ropes. They've kind of lost the thread. And in particular, there was a lot of focus on the young vote, which still did vote more Democratic than Republican, but trended to the right, like a lot of demographics did during that election. And there was just kind of this sense that, like, the party's just out of touch. It's not speaking to people. So I guess what challenges does this set of circumstances present for you in establishing this chapter? And what are you finding when you actually go out and talk to people? I mean, I was at your kickoff event a couple of weeks ago, and it was packed. You drew a big crowd. So I guess, are you finding when you go and talk to people about the Democrats, what kind of reaction are you getting from people?
Currently in the environment we're in, it's very positive. A lot of people are excited, and a lot of people think that there was already a chapter formed. I've heard that many a times, like, "Oh, y'all haven't existed before," and I'm like, "Nope," but here we are. We're doing this thing now. I think a big thing that what you were saying, is they didn't know. I feel like the biggest issue with this past election, the presidential election, was that we're an umbrella party. So we have many, many issues that cover the board. But there's also an issue of having that collective mission statement. Everything needs to lead up to one statement, so that we all are organized and can vouch for this is what we stand for. Instead of, I stand for, let's say, I stand for LGBTQ rights. I stand for women's rights, but I don't stand for, immigration. Saying those different things kind of depletes the message and makes us more fragmented. And I think the issue is that we need, what I plan to do and what we all plan to do with Knox Young Dem, is to make sure that we have a cohesive model that leads to one specific mission, so that we are all working across the board to meet that, and we can get real work done.
And Julia, do you have thoughts on that? I mean, you talk about having the experience of actually going out, campaigning, organizing. What have you heard from people about the Democratic Party, or questions or criticisms or anything else they have of it?
Yeah, especially here in the South, and I think you know this as well. Our generation sees politics very differently. There's a lot of two-sidesism. A lot of people like to say both sides are bad, and same with Democrats or Republicans. And so while people are excited, I also see a lot of just unengaged, don't care anymore. And so a huge part of what we are trying to do is to say, if you don't like it, then come in and you change it. We change things from the ground up, from the inside out. So if you don't like how establishment Dems are running things, then come on in, come into the party. And that's going to be part of what we do as well, is taking, we have a really robust high school Dems group here. They just started through Gloria Johnson supporting them. So they're well established. They'll come to us, and then we will send them into Knox Dems party. And so if you don't like how things are going, then come have your voice heard. Come be a part of this, because it doesn't change by just complaining about it or saying that it's not working out. Like, we have to get involved. We have to not to say the most popular quote ever. You have to be the change. So trying to get that message out of there. But there is a lot of disengagement. I mean, politics isn't working for people anymore. And a lot of that could be because of establishment Democratic policies. A lot of people want progressive economic policies on the right and the left. You have a spectrum of liberal beliefs and conservative beliefs, which can be more things like gay rights, women's rights. But then you have economic beliefs, and that is free market versus progressive economy. And a lot of people actually on both sides gear towards that progressive economics, which goes back into, you're asking, what's the overall sentiment of people our age? And it's not working for us. I can't afford anything. Affordability is the biggest thing with our age demographic. So I think that if we can hit on those things and have a cohesive statement without leaving our marginalized groups behind, never forget that. But if we can work on progressive economics, that's how you get, people to come over to your side.
And so what do you think some of those issues are when you talk about progressive economics? Often people think about, well, that means raising taxes. But what in particular are you talking about?
For me personally, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but a lot of things that I'm seeing, even with our age group, we have to work as a party to re-message how we talk about taxes specifically. We just added $4 trillion to our deficit with this last budget, and that was a Republican budget. They used to be the party of, we want a balanced budget, and that's just not the case anymore. Somebody has to pay for that at some point, and that is our age demographic, whether that is our taxes increasing or, things just getting worse. We can even see that on a local scale. Tennessee is in a budget crisis. We've been leaning on COVID loans for years now, and that's about to run out. And we are facing to my understanding, hundreds of millions of dollars of a deficit this year. And somebody has to pay for that. And a lot of the sentiment going around is income tax, which we don't have right now. So we're about to see a lot of changes with taxes. But what I think we need to work on messaging is corporate welfare. Corporations across the board are getting welfare. They are privatizing their profit while publicizing their losses, which is what we see in underpaying workers, not providing proper health care. So making sure that we're rebranding, that we're not giving corporate tax breaks, we are stopping corporate welfare or raising taxes on rich people. People have a vast misunderstanding of what we mean when we say tax the wealthy. We're talking about the billionaires. We're talking about corporations who see themselves as citizens, thanks to Citizens United. But that's what we mean when we say tax the rich. So starting there, I know Bernie just introduced legislation for a 5% wealth tax. So keep going, do more, keep introducing that type of legislation to fight back against corporations. So I think that's the first way. But other things are just reframing the mindset with our people that it's not like your tax dollars should be working for you. If we have billions of dollars to go do a war in Iran, then we have billions of dollars for Medicare for all, for universal childcare, things like that will make people's lives significantly better. And that can start locally. And I think that's the biggest message we want to send is, there's all these national things we can do, sure, but states can pass universal childcare. We just saw it happen in New York City. We are seeing it out in Colorado. You can do things at a state level that significantly make people's lives better. So letting people know that, sure, maybe you feel like your vote nationally in like a presidential election, maybe that doesn't matter, or you feel like it doesn't, which I have many opinions on, but maybe you feel like it doesn't matter somewhere here. But your vote for how your county spends their budget and how your city spends their budget, and even statewide, what you vote into state politics will vastly improve your life if you do it the right way.
And Solomon, you talked about the Democratic Party being kind of an umbrella party with, sort of a lot of interest groups within it. It's yours. I mean, I know that there have been issues, particularly in recent years. Transgender people have been sort of singled out as a big target by the right. My sense, I have kids who are 21 and 18. My sense is that among their friends, there isn't a tremendous amount of division along those kinds of issues. And I guess, what's your sense of that in terms of messaging from the party? Like, there have been some people after 2024, kind of more centrist Democrats, who have come out and said, we're too identified with these marginalized groups. We kind of need to push them to the side. And I guess, how do you think that resonates with younger voters?
I think that leads to a lot of apathy, especially because there's a broad demographic of individuals that live in Knoxville within the 18 to 35-year-old age group. And by saying that, by pushing, you need to step aside and, not be so intertwined with these minority groups, whatever it may be. I mean, you think about it. I mean, Kamala Harris was a Black South Asian woman. And for me and my family as well, coming from my mom's Black. So like, it hit kind of home, and it made her feel some types of ways, and it made me feel some types of ways as well. But it began to show me, or how do I say this? I guess I was seeing it as more of, do people actually care? Like, or is this just a DEI motive to, post a front and say, oh, we care about these people. But, when it comes time to step up to the plate, we're not there.
Kind
You're
of
not pulling
tokenism.
through. Yeah, it's tokenism. And I feel like that's something that we are very much combating within Knox Young Dems, is we are all about action, actually doing the work. Not going to sit here and just, talk the talk. We're going to walk the walk across the board. And that's something that we really want to do, is get within the community as well. Community is the roots. That's where change happens. And there's a lot of issues that happen within, like, different political organizations where they will preach a message, but they won't actually, get out and do the work. So we are out here we're actually going to come out here and do the work, is what I'm trying to say, and show up where we need to be. And that's going to transform, I think, the whole demographic and the Democratic viewpoint here for the majority of those 18 to 35-year-olds in Knox County, because they'll see that we're actually doing something and not just talking about it, posting something on Instagram about it and, complaining. We're going to actually put our foot down and do it.
And so what comes next? I mean, you've obviously gone through the whole process of creating the chapter, which I know took a while to do and get recognized by the national organization and everything. What happens now? Like, what are you actually doing now?
So, if we may, I do want to take a beat back to
sure.
your last question.
Of course.
And just add to what you were saying, especially the conversation of our trans friends, or, stepping away from that. Let's just be really clear. It's not the Democrats who are sending that messaging that's weird. It's the Republicans who are sending that message that's weird. So that's what the messaging should be, is, why do you care so much? We just love our people, and we will always stand up for them. I think we've all had a conversation with our exec team that one of our priorities is we will not leave our marginalized groups behind. That's where we draw a line. We will always support our LGBTQ plus friends and our women, and there's no backing away from that or making a message that sounds pretty to everybody. Like, we stand firm in our beliefs, and we stand firm in inviting everyone in. So we don't want to shy away. I think that if you cannot stand up for the most marginalized group of people, then you can't stand up for anybody. So why are we attacking such a small percentage of the population, and why are we shying away from it? So that messaging should be, you're weird for focusing on it so much when there are so many other things wrong right now that we should be focusing on.
Right. I think, like, transgender people are maybe 0.5% of the Tennessee population.
Yes.
And yet every year we have multiple bills in the legislature about it.
I mean, you can see the legislation that's going through right now is getting immigrant kids out of schools, trying to pass the death penalty for women for getting abortions. It's things like, people do not care about that. I mean, they do, as in we don't want it to happen, but that does not make the lives of a Tennessean better. If anything, that makes it significantly worse. So having those conversations and really bringing people in, next steps for us, I mean, focusing on local politics. I don't think your average voter realizes how important local politics is. We got here because a few decades ago, Republicans started taking over school boards, county commission seats, city council seats. It starts quite literally in your county, and making sure that there's always someone on the ballot for you to vote for. So really,
do it this time.
Mm-hmm. But as far as, your next question, that was, what's next for us?
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of bleeds into it. I think you talked about, Solomon, the Knox Dems are really good about recruiting people, getting people on the ballot. I think this year we definitely filled all county commission seats and a school board. I think one of the biggest ones that we're missing is House District 16. We couldn't get filled. But other than that, I mean, we even have someone running for county mayor this year. Knox Dems does a great job at that, and they do a great job at recruiting really good people. Our Knox County Democrats are great people. They do great things, and they're very passionate. We're friends with a lot of them, and they're out there doing the work. So they've got that. We want to be more of the boots on the ground. We want to be out in the community. One of our very first things after our first meeting on Wednesday is going to be a community service project here under the bridge with a program called the Relaunch. So we want to be out in the community and showing.
Right. And for people not familiar with Knoxville, that's an area where a lot of homeless people gather every day. Yeah.
And it's, I've been here since 2019, and you used to be able to park under there to get to the old city. The old city is more of our demographic, 18 to 35. And so there's a lot of bars and things down here, and that's notoriously the free parking area over here. And, you might have seen 3 or 4 homeless people under the bridge 6 years ago, but it is hundreds now. It has significantly increased. You used to know the people by name. There was a lady that sold doilies, you would know the people. And we kind of sheltered them and took care of them, but now it's just significantly worse. And there's not much being done to address it. So we do want to get out there and bring attention. So, of course, one day of us going and helping the Relaunch, who's doing by far the work. They serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, and take donations. They clean up under the bridge so that they can have a safe space to live right now, because we don't have alternatives for them. And so really amplifying those groups, like a huge part of what we're passionate about is there are good people in Knox County doing good things. There are good groups doing great things that aren't getting amplified. So we don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel or start our own program where we go feed the homeless. We would like to amplify groups that already exist so people can learn about them. So, of course, our one day out with the Relaunch isn't going to change the world by any means, but if those 15 people that are coming with us start volunteering once a week, that's where change starts to happen. And they see us, and that group now knows that they can come to us if they have a big project that needs to be done. We just want to be the example of what we want our party to represent.
What our values are, what we preach, we want to see that in action. And so people, this is who we are, not just, what we say we are.
We don't want to say we want to help the homeless, and then you don't see us actually out there doing anything. A lot of people don't pay attention to county commission meetings and what's happening in legislation. So you have to do it. You have to be out there in the communities.
Visible manifestation. Well, and I think one of the criticisms often of political party organizations is that you see and hear a lot from them right around elections, and then not so much the rest of the time. So it sounds like you're talking about trying to have a more consistent and visible presence.
Very much so. And I think how that kind of came into the ordeal was, from my understanding, for me, it was back in August, the August elections with city council. It was August, right? Yes. I was like, what day is it? So back in August, and it was across the board too. All the elections, all the Democrats, shifted the margins completely, like astronomically blue. And that was just unheard of in, Mississippi or in Virginia, all of these areas that are predominantly usually red were switching blue. And it happened here locally too, in our city council. And I was celebrating, I think it was Karen Adams' celebration party or election party. And I was standing there and I was like, I feel happy, I feel excited, this is good. Then also in the back of my head, like, I was like, but why is a part of me like, not really that shocked? Like, why am I not like, oh, this is phenomenal, and like even more I could have been more excited. Like, what's the part of me that's holding back, and making me doubt, like, thinking, why is it that this happened now when it hasn't happened every time before? And I realized that, and I sat on it and I thought about it. And I came to the conclusion, I guess, that we have a problem of only being present when we are in the election cycle, and we continue to do what we got to do outside of it, but it's not enough. We don't consistently stay on top of it, and instead we, I guess we kind of pivot and have an off year. And off years are not affordable in the economy, the political landscape that we are in currently. Having an off year is pretty much saying that our issues and our values are only relevant during the election season. And so what we need to do, and what I was thinking this was way before we started KYD in my head, I was like, the biggest thing is that we have to be consistent, whether it's election year or not, because if we're not consistent, then the same system will continue to repeat itself. Because if we're being for real, we keep repeating the exact same system over and over again. We're supposed to be the progressive party, but we're not really moving forward. We're kind of stagnant because we continue to go around in this cycle over and over again from moving forward. And then, we feel comfortable. So we take a step back and we sit back. And the next thing you know, here's Donald Trump or whoever else. And we can't afford that.
I would say this goes to that protest sign you see that says if Kamala had won, we'd be having brunch right now. No, we would be working with her to try to get the things that we want done passed. And so having that, I would say educational moment. I don't like to say that I'm like educating people, but, really trying to help people understand better, what the goal is here. And I even had a member who is going to come on Wednesday reach out to me on TikTok. He saw a video that I posted. And so we've been talking back and forth a little bit about his frustrations. He's lived here since like 2005, so on and so forth. And he says, but how quick do you think we can make the change? And I get that a lot. Like, if I don't see it this election cycle, I'm giving up. So I think a lot of where we step in with that consistency and that it's going to take a while is letting people know change takes a while, and that it takes people who are willing to hold on for 8, 10, 15 years to make that change. We've already seen a lot of hidden changes that aren't out in the public or, right in your face. Like, this is the first time the Democratic Party in Tennessee has had an active chapter in all 95 counties. We haven't seen that before. So we are making small changes. Afton Bain's campaign was not just an Afton Bain thing. That is years and years of community organizing and getting great people into great places within the Democratic Party to be able to have supported that campaign. That wasn't just a one-off thing. That is the change that you're seeing within Tennessee. So really helping our members or our community, even if they're not a member, understand that change takes time and consistent effort, and not just showing up during election season and being in the community. So that's why we're so community focused first. Coalition building is making sure that we're here for the long term, making sure Young Dems is here for the long term, and that if an election cycle doesn't go how we want, we're not just like, oh, throw our hands up. We still have work to do.
Right. Our issues don't go away.
Yeah. And, back to your point, I know Solomon makes a point a lot of, like, we can't wait until it's an emergency to start putting the work in. We just have to consistently keep clawing our way through until we're back. Another educational moment is Tennessee doesn't register as Democrats or Republicans. A lot of people don't realize that. The only data we have on who's a Democrat or Republican is how they voted in the primary. And as we know, a lot of people that are Democrats go vote in Republican primaries for, lesser of the, quote, bad options. So we truly don't know how many of us there even are. So when people say, I feel like a blue dot, or I feel like Tennessee is very red, Tennessee votes 45-55, Democrat, Republican. And I would say a large percentage of Democrats don't get out and vote because they feel that way. And it's made that way by design. They don't want you to know how many Democrats are truly in Tennessee. And our demographic specifically, has not seen a blue Tennessee. We were kids the last time that there was a blue Tennessee, or if at all. Some are so young that they have not seen it really at all. So that goes nationally as well. A lot of our demographic has only ever seen a Trump administration since 2016. They barely remember the Obama years, if at all, especially that younger side. I was in middle school with Obama, and I'm the older side of our demographic. So they've only seen this chaos since Citizens United took place. So helping them understand that it takes a lot. There's going to be change, but it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take people stepping up and going out every day and making consistent relationships within our community.
All right. Well, that seems like a good way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So thank you both very much. I really appreciate your time.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The 64th Arkansas Folk Festival will take place this weekend in the small town of Mountain View in the Ozark Mountains in the north-central part of the state. The festival started in 1963 as the brainchild of employees of the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service, who were seeking ways to preserve and promote the traditional arts of the Ozarks, and also to draw visitors and money to the economically depressed area. An initial proposal for a craft fair took on added dimension when they recruited local singer-songwriter Jimmy Driftwood to put together a music program. Driftwood, best known for writing the songs Battle of New Orleans and Tennessee Stud, called on local old-time and folk musicians he knew. As he put it, quote, timber cutters, farmers, housewives, and all plain people of the hills, unquote. The timing was right. The folk music boom was in full swing across the country, and there was a lot of interest in traditional songs and authentic voices. More than 4,000 people packed the Mountain View High School gym. The festival became an annual event, and by the early 1970s it drew up to 100,000 visitors to the town, which has a population of less than 3,000 people. It has waned a bit since, as subsequent generations have moved on to other musical interests, but it remains a major cultural event. Local musicians and players from across the country gather around the courthouse square to play traditional music late into the night. You can also visit Ozark Folk Center State Park, another product of efforts by the Cooperative Extension Service, which includes a craft village where more than 20 artisans make and sell jewelry, leather goods, stained glass, ironwork, and more. This year's festival is taking place April 17th and 18th. You can find information in the show notes. And that wraps us up for this week. Remember, the Progressive South is a nonprofit enterprise, and you can find information about supporting us on our website, theprogressivesouth.org. You can also reach out to me directly at jmayshark@theprogressivesouth.org. Thanks to our friends in Bark for our theme music, and to Lord Seth the Libertarian for his production work at Barbarian Productions. And thanks to you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.